Hello, hello, hello. This is Marshall Goldsmith. So happy to have you joining us on LinkedIn Live today. We have a wonderful show with my comrade Sanyin Cheng, and we're going to be talking about something today that's called blind spots. How to understand your own blind spots, and as a coach, maybe helping other people understand theirs. Before we get started, I'll briefly introduce myself and I'll turn it over to my colleague Sanyin. My name is Marshall Goldsmith. I'm an executive educator. I travel all around the world speaking and teaching, been to 102 countries. I'm executive coach. I've been the privilege of coaching many of the top CEOs in the world. And then I write books and articles, written or edited 41 books and 6 best-selling books. And then I'm adopting people. So I have this wonderful program called Design the Life You Love that was inspired by my friend Aisha Bursell. And as part of the program, I give away everything I know to everybody, and the idea is they're going to give back to others. And we've had 18,000 people apply to be part of this wonderful family, and we have about 250 members right now. It's called 100 Coaches Program, which is a great idea. And one of the original members of our fine group is my colleague Sanyin Cheng. Sanyin is a wonderful human being. For years, I ranked #1 coach in the world. And by the Thinkers 50, I was always the highest rated coach. And now they put me in the Hall of Fame. That's where they put old people. And now the new #1 Thinkers 50 coach of the world is Sanyin, my good friend. Sanyin, can you take a second, introduce yourself, and then we'll kick off the show.
Thank you so much, Marshall. And Thinkers 50, we'll hear from Stuart and Des, who are the co-founders of Thinkers 50 on the Monday show. Thinkers 50 is really the Oscars of management. And that award was really special because I know the field of coaches, so many of whom I admire and learn from so much, and many of them are on the show. So this interviewing them has been a wonderful learning experience for me too. But as the world's #1 coach, I work with leaders and their organizations on blind spots, helping them build stronger teams so that they can thrive during periods of uncertainty and beyond. I work with military generals, CEOs, sports industry executives, and like Marshall, I learned so much from my clients and the leaders whom I work with. I'm also the executive director of the Coach K Leadership and Ethics Center at Duke University. And so for today's show, Marshall and I thought we'll talk about blind spots because one of the things that we do as coaches is help our clients understand how do you get above the fray of things and understand what are the blind spots that's happening through transitions and also during periods of crisis and also periods of success. Blind spots is something that everyone has. It's a reason why great athletes, the best athletes like LeBron James and Olympians also have coaches. We eliminate blind spots. But part of that learning today is in terms of helping people work through their blind spots, we're also learning about our own blind spots. And so we thought today's show is we'll talk through some of the top blind spots that we are experiencing that's connected to also what we have learned from our clients. I can start off and then I'll ask Marshall for his and we'll go back and forth. So I'll start off with the story. This is week 9. This is week 9 of COVID and social isolation and social distancing and isolation and quarantine. And yesterday I hit a wall. I was overwhelmed. I was feeling guilty because there's emails that haven't been answered for 2 weeks. I'm also a mom. So my kids, yes, we're feeding them 3 meals a day, but one of those meals happens to be peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I was feeling guilty about the homeschooling and not helping them keep up enough with their schoolwork. And yesterday afternoon, I just had a period of time where there wasn't any meetings. And instead of saying, how can I keep up with everything else? I just wanted to crawl into bed and sleep for weeks. And then I felt guilty about being an underachiever. And I took to Facebook and I shared that out with my friends. I'm like, hey, I'm feeling this way. Is this normal? And the responses I got was, you know what? We are all feeling this way. And so one of the key blind spots that I had actually worked with so many leaders on that I didn't take as my own advice is, as leaders, we take care of everyone else because we feel that deep sense of responsibility for everyone else, whether it's in our families, our families, our children, our spouses, at work, our teams. And we all have this high level of excellence that we subscribe to. But one of the biggest blind spot is we forget to take care of us, you, me. You know, if you're not well, no one else, you won't be of help to anyone else. So that's one big blind spot is during this time, it's okay. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to feel unproductive. It's okay to to feel like you're not performing at the level of excellence that you've always been. That's okay. But what that means is when you're feeling this way, it's your body, it's your mind saying, stop, pause, take a break because you're not feeling well. And if you're not feeling well, you're not going to be of use to anyone. And so, in that blind spot, making it aware, because there was a big awakening for me yesterday, and taking the time to say, all right, take care of yourself too. Right. So that was my one of the blind spots I came upon. Marshall, how about you?
Well, you see, Sanyin, I don't know that I have any blind spots at all.
I love you so much, Marshall. You never fail to make us laugh. You're awesome.
Yeah, so I'm a little unfamiliar with this. Blind spot.
There's a difference between blind spot and blind. You don't want to be blind. Just
I can see everything perfectly clear myself, so I'm confused about what you're saying.
I love you.
So I've got an example of blind spots. I'm very blessed. And as years ago, I got my PhD at UCLA, and I had a couple of very, very profound teachers. One of them was named Dr. Bob Tannenbaum. So I'm in this group with old Dr. Tannenbaum, and at UCLA, a couple of guys from UCLA invented something called the Johari window. Now, Sanyin, have you ever heard of the Johari window before?
Yes, it's like a quadrant, isn't it?
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
a quadrant, four
And,
quadrants.
actually, let me tell you the funny story. It's invented by two guys named Joe and Harry. But they thought that back in the 60s, right, Joe and Harry's window sounded like a bar. So they thought Johari sounded very deep and wise. So they called it the Johari window because they thought it sounded better than Joe and Harry's window. So that's where the name Johari window comes from. They just made it up. Two UCLA guys named Joe and Harry invented this model. And the Johari window says that, there's two issues, what we can see in ourselves and what others can see in us. And the first part is, that's the unknown. We can't see it and they can't see it. It's just kind of invisible. And then the second part is, what we see in ourselves, but others don't see. That's called the private side. We don't share that with others, which is okay sometimes. And then part of it is what we see and they see. The hard part is what's called the blind side. And the blind side is what others can see in us that we can't see in ourselves, as Sanyin talks about our blind spots. So I'll tell you a story about how I learned from this. I'm at UCLA. So I'm a young know-it-all PhD student. So I'm babbling on about people for 3 weeks. We're in these encounter groups and we're encouraged to talk about whatever we want to talk about. So I'm babbling on about people in Los Angeles. And, people in Los Angeles are phony and plastic and materialistic. And they drive around in these fancy Rolls Royce cars and they wear $85 sequin blue jeans. And all they care about is impressing others. And they're not really deep. Now, of course, I'm from Valley Station, Kentucky, which totally qualifies me as the expert on all things Los Angeles. So for 3 weeks, I babble on about this crap. Finally, old Dr. Tannenbaum, he looks at me, scratches his beard. He says, Marshall, who are you talking to? Who are you talking to? I said, I guess I'm talking to the group. Well, he said, you know, there's 11 people in the group. You only seem interested in the opinion of one person. All your comments are directed toward one person. Who is that one person? I thought about it. I said, that's a good question. That'd be you there, Dr. Tannenbaum. He said, me? He said, yeah. Well, there are 10 other people. Why not them? I said, you know, Dr. Tannenbaum, I think a person with your deep background and experience can understand the true significance of what I'm saying. You can understand the true significance of how screwed up it is just to try to impress people all the time. Old Dr. Tannenbaum looks at me, he scratches his beard, and he goes, you know, Marshall, is there any chance for the last 3 weeks all you've been doing is trying to impress me? Well, I said, no, Dr. Tannenbaum. I'm very confused. I think you've missed the point of everything I've been telling you for 3 weeks. You see, I've been explaining how screwed up it is to try to impress people all the time. See, I don't do that myself. I've been explaining to you how screwed up this is. 3 weeks. I think you've missed the point. I don't think you understand. So he looks at me, he scratches his beard, he goes, I think I understand. I look around the room, I see these 10 people. I hated Dr. Tannenbaum's guts for 6 months. 6 months I hated old Dr. Tannenbaum. 6 months later, I said, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. You just taught me a great lesson of life. Well, back to this business of blind spots. It's real easy to see things we don't want to see about ourselves and somebody else. It's real hard to see those things in the mirror. It's real easy to see that in somebody else, and it's real hard to see that in the mirror. And that's what I've been doing for a living for the last, 40 years. I give people feedback. And I let them know what everybody sees about them. And a lot of times they don't want to hear it. The first year, they're confused. They don't understand. They're wrong. I would say, well, maybe they're confused, but maybe not. Maybe you're confused. Maybe you just don't want to see this in yourself. Well, this concept, Sanyin, is real easy to talk about till it applies to who? Ourselves. And that little interaction and all that time with Dr. Tannenbaum those years totally changed my life. So I think this is a very, very important topic. Now, Sanyin, are we going to be asking for questions from the group today?
We will. And there, I just want to follow up on what you had said about the Johari window, because we're all shackled by our confirmation bias, right? In behavioral science, there's something called confirmation bias, which is when we have a belief about something, about another person, or even about ourselves, we tend to place more weight on data that supports that belief and be dismissive of data that doesn't support that belief, that confirmation bias. And therefore, in terms of our interactions with others, it's not just about us changing our behavior for the better. It's also about working hard at changing that perception, because you may be changing behavior for the better, but they may not be seeing it because of their confirmation bias. And your colleagues, conversely, they may be working hard at becoming even better, but because of our own confirmation bias, are we opening our eyes to seeing it? And one of the biggest blind spots, Marshall talked about feedback or feed forward on things we may not want to hear about ourselves. We also have blind spots around what our superpowers are. And we need other people to give us feedback on that too. We assume that if someone has a superpower, they of course know what it is. They don't, because the paradox is when we're really good at something, we think it comes easily to everyone else. And so invite feedback also on what your strengths are and why. And also be that person generously, also giving other people feedback to let them know what their superpowers are. Because the entire purpose of feedback is just to empower. And to empower, they need to understand what they can work better, what they should stop doing, as well as what they should keep on doing. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Justin. What questions do we have from the audience today?
Hello, Sanyin. Yeah, thank you so much for that. A lot of good comments coming in about the Johari window. I'd never heard that either, so appreciate you sharing that, Marshall. Our first question comes from Nomvuzo from Johannesburg, South Africa. And Nomvuzo is curious, what what kind of feedback can somebody seek so that they can find their own blind spots, particularly in a leadership position?
I can take that one. I highly suggest getting confidential 360-degree feedback. There are a lot of ways you can do this. My friend Jim Kouzis and Barry Posner have a way to do it. My friends at Stakeholder Coaching have a way to do it. I'm sure there's plenty of different forms you can use. Internal companies have their own 360 feedback mechanisms. I'm a pioneer in the area of customized 360-degree feedback. And I think it's great to get confidential feedback as a leader. The reality is, I never encourage leaders to ask for face-to-face feedback. Number one, they don't want to tell you. And number two, you don't want to hear it. So I really love that idea. To see your blind spot, people need to trust that what they can say is going to be confidential. You're not going to know who said what. They need to have enough people so that you're protected. And then people can start telling the truth. Because in reality, they're not going to tell you the truth. Sanyin, one of the things I've done at my home is these sessions for retiring executives. And one of the participants, one of the programs was a great guy, Mike Duke. Mike was CEO of Walmart. And, Mike has a little joke. When he's CEO of Walmart, everybody laughs, such a funny joke. Oh. Then he retired and he loved his little joke. So he's meeting with his group. He loves his joke. So he's meeting with his group and he tells a joke. Nobody laughs. I thought, well, it must be grumpy people. Everybody loves my joke. In a second group, tells a joke again. Nobody laughs. Well, as it turned out, see, when he was CEO of Walmart, that joke was real funny. He's not the CEO of Walmart. No, nobody's laughing. In fact, his wife came to him. She goes, Mike, you idiot. Mike, did you actually think that stupid joke was funny? Well, of course he thought it was funny. Every time he told it, people laughed. That's because he's CEO of Walmart. He's not CEO of Walmart. And that joke was never funny, but he never got honest feedback. Sanyin, what's your suggestion about how leaders get feedback?
Well, I think also it's how everyone can, we're never really taught how to give effective feedback. So saying good job or bad job, that's feedback, but it's not effective because it doesn't help the listener know what they should keep on doing and what they should stop doing. And I remember several years ago, I was meeting up with one of my former students and she had said, my boss never gives me feedback. I said, what do you mean? And she's like, all he ever said was great job. I was like, okay, so that's feedback, but what he's trying to give you feedback, but you're not, but let's unpack that. So next time someone says, great job, stop and say, you know what? Thank you. Always say thank you whenever someone takes the time to give you feedback, right? Thank you. But can you help me understand what is it about what I did that made that job good? So I know how to replicate that behavior going forward because I may not be seeing it. And that gets into a conversation with them that helps them also think. It helps the other person think about how they can give more effective feedback, but also helps them process through what is it that you did that made that job good. Now, conversely, if someone says, oh, that was terrible, say, thank you. Can you help me understand what about it made it terrible so that I know what not to do again going forward? Because I'm still learning. And basically, this is a way, feedback is a great way of building trust. The trust may not be there, but when people see you're receptive to it and you're actively seeking out, and by the way, when someone gives you tough feedback, be mindful of your expressions. Because they're like all you, as a leader, you can say till you're blue in the face, I want feedback. And then the moment someone gives you bad news or bad feedback, negative feedback, and your face is like angry, that'll guarantee you they will never give you any constructive feedback ever again. So ask for it. And then when someone says good or bad, ask why, make it a conversation to dive into why so that you can make a learning experience. And that's a way of building trust. And be mindful of your expressions as they're giving you that feedback, because those are cues to them as well.
Justin, what I'm going to do, I really believe, I'll just speak for myself, I don't really learn much of anything till I know how it applies in my own life. Until I see the flaw in myself, I have trouble understanding how it relates to anybody. And I feel very blessed because I've had so much times this has been pointed out to me. And I'm going to ask you to ask people to put in the chat box the following, answer the following question. Give us a quick example of once in your life when you became preachy and self-righteous about other people's problems. And upon reflection, you kind of realize, yeah, I got that problem myself. When is it you became preachy about other people and judgmental and talking down? And then look in the mirror and say, you know, wait a minute. Maybe I'm seeing my problem in them, but not seeing it in myself. Maybe I'm seeing my problem in them, I'm not seeing it in myself. So if people could write down one or two examples of that, I would love it. And Sanyin, while people are writing, I'll give you one more example from my own life. And it was when I was at UCLA. Again, young, self-righteous, know-it-all PhD student. I was working down the LA City Planning Commission. My dissertation advisor was Dr. Fred Case, who basically saved me from flunking out of school, which I was headed toward doing because of my bad attitude. So anyway, I'm kind of negative and self-righteous, and I'm complaining about people in LA, and he's getting some negative feedback about me. So he calls me in the office. He says, Marshall, I'm getting this feedback from City Hall there. You're kind of grumpy and negative and judgmental. What's happening here? I go into this tirade about the LA city government is inefficient. So old Dr. Case looks at me and goes, what a stunning breakthrough. You, the brilliant Marshall Goldsmith, has learned that the LA city government is inefficient. He said the guy pumping gas down the corner knew that for years. Anything else bothering you? I said, he said, oh my God, number two, you, the brilliant one, Marshall Goldsmith, has realized when people donate millions of dollars to politicians, they're nicer to those people than the people who don't give them any money. Oh, you're a smart one. You figured that one out too. He said, Marshall, you're coming across as a judgmental, whiny pain in the butt. He said, option A, you can continue with this bad attitude, and you know what? You're fired, and you're never going to graduate, and you wasted the last 5 years of your life. Option B, you can still try to make a positive difference, but have a little fun here and clean up your attitude. What's it going to be, son? I said, Dr. Case, let's have some fun here. Well, that was good coaching. It totally changed my life. Dr. Case had done more for the city of Los Angeles than I would ever dream of doing. Yet he wasn't judging people or talking down at people and acting better than people. Who the hell was I to be doing this, right? And so I think it's real good when we get into that preachy, self-righteous crap. Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror, because, Sanyin, when I look for the source of my problems, I seldom have to look very far. I look in the mirror, and most of my problems are staring right back at me. Now, over here, we got any good suggestions or comments about that coming from our friend Justin? By the way, Justin at Methods, they do a wonderful job of putting these programs together, and they just are reaching out to help people during this time of crisis. So thanks to you guys. Justin, anything else?
Thank you, Marshall. Yeah, a whole lot of people are writing into us right now. I'll read a few of them off for you. So J.T. Shem kind of reflects that and says, almost in every situation. Dina tells us too often. And then we have another one that says, let's see, from Michelle Primus, that says, I get preachy about people not having an open mind. Ouch. That mirror is clear. So it's interesting. It sounds like it's a common trait for all of us that we tend to do that.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. I hate those judgmental, closed-minded people, right? God knows I'm not judgmental at all. I hate all those other judgmental people, though. They really bother me a lot. That's a wonderful one. Sanyin, what's your next reflection? Or Justin, you haven't read the question first.
Yeah, certainly do. So it's interesting. Earlier on, Sanyin, you were talking about feedback and kind of accepting feedback. And Marshall, you were as well on the 360 as far as not doing it in person because they're not going to be honest with you. And frankly, you're not in a position to accept it. And I think you handled a question that we had from the audience really well. I just wanted to shout out to Sudharan from Mumbai, India. he had asked what the best ways were to accept feedback on his blind spots were. So I believe that was answered. So I just wanted to make sure, Siddha Haran, you got some acknowledgement there. Thank you. But we have one from the USA. Usually we got all these worldwide audience. We've got Georgetta Hicks from the US, who I thought this question was really good. How do I identify my own superpowers? So what's the positive thing I can draw more to?
Yeah, Sanyin, you can answer that one better than me.
This is one of my favorite things to think about because, as I said before, one of the biggest paradoxes is when something is a superpower, we also draw energy from it, and it comes easily to us. So imagine LeBron James being able to dunk that ball in the basket, right? It's like, wait, not everyone can do this. Or Sherlock Holmes, his powers of deduction. And the thing is, because we have a blind spot around our superpowers, the one thing is to invite others into giving us insight into what our superpowers are. And I remember earlier when we have these, every Saturday, there's a group of us coaches, Marshall's in that group, called a life planning review group. And 3 Saturdays ago, Carol Kaufman, who is a co-founder of the Institute of Coaching at Harvard, she was sharing something about videos. And she said, Sanyin, the way you do videos is different. I didn't know that before. And so afterwards, I called her up and say, Carol, tell me, I'm not fishing for compliments here. I just need to understand, what is it that I do that is different? And she was able to lay out from her perspective what some of those things were. And then I was able to take that information, that data, because that's all feedback is. It's data. It's data to empower us, and run it by 2 or 3 other people just to get that sense. And now I discover, oh, here's a particular superpower of mine when it comes to videos. You can do the same thing too. The key is to seek out feedback around what is it that you do well and how do you do it well, right? Or you might even have a misperception about something. So one of the things, just from my own personal experience, I'm known as a connector because I love connecting people together to make great things happen. And there was a point when when someone says I'm a connector, I was dismissive of that because I thought that means I'm just a Rolodex put together, someone who just puts people together. And then until I stopped and voiced that vulnerably to a friend of mine on here's how I felt about being named only as a connector, that I was able to get feedback on what is it about connecting that made it substantive and intellectual. And that gave me also insight into something I should double down on. So in terms of superpowers, the thing is to reach out to people, be vulnerable, and to be able to ask for feedback around your behaviors that made something a strength, and also be that person to give other people feedback on what their superpowers are, because you can assume they know it.
I love that. And Sanyin, unlike you, I personally love fishing for compliments. So if any of you would like to say nice things about me or that I'm a wonderful human being, I want you to just feel free to do that to your heart's content. Just babble on and on about my wonderfulness, because unlike Sanyin, I like fishing for compliments, and I like people saying good things about me, period. And I haven't got a whole lot of guilt about it. So good is good. Lots of good things. Feel free.
Why we love Marshall. Actually,
I know.
Why we love Marshall Goldsmith. Type into comments right now. Let's make his day.
Oh, Sanyin, why don't you wrap up?
All right. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And I think one of the key takeaways is that with blind spots, the biggest blind spot is ourselves. That's a key takeaway I have from Marshall's story, is when we're being judgy or we want to criticize, guess what? Stop and pause, because the biggest blind spot is in ourselves and how others might see us and how we see ourselves and stories we want to tell about ourselves. Thank you to the Methods Network for putting on this amazing show, and also to our partners, Thinkers 50, Now on Monday, we have a
Yay.
special show. Thinkers 50 is the Oscars of management. They've been for the last 2 decades the premier ranking of global management thinkers. And on the show, we will have Stuart Cranier and Des Dearlove, who are the co-founders of the show, all built around the idea of the power of ideas and how ideas can truly change the world. So it's going to be a very special show on Monday, 11:30 Eastern Standard Time, right here. Thank you, Marshall.
Thank you. Bye-bye.